Awesome. Hello, awesome authors. It is amazing to be with you here live in the Answering the Call to Write group. Today I am with the wonderful Lauren Darroch. Lauren, am I saying that right, Darroch?
It's actually pronounced as Dara. It's Gaelic, so I do have a UK
Oh,
connection myself.
hi, Dara. Dara.
Yeah. If you're Scottish, there's probably a bit of a Scottish accent there, but I am, you know, not, my family's not been in Scotland for some time now, so
Right. Well, I've been pronouncing it wrong. Sorry about that.
that's okay. I'm used to having to correct people. You say it wrong, it's totally fine. Yeah, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for being with us. I'll just quickly introduce you to the group. Lauren is a Christian author with a heart for writing about the persecuted church. She's the author of a book called The Road to Damascus. I'm going to ask her a little bit more about that today. She is also the founder of Maple Leaf Marketing. Is that the...
Maple Cross Marketing, and the
Oh,
novel is actually The Road from Damascus, but it's
my
okay.
goodness. Maple Cross Marketing.
Yes.
Awesome. So I'll ask you a little bit more about that as well today. But we are talking about social media today and how to stay consistent without feeling overwhelmed. And I know that that's a big thing for many of us in this group, staying consistent with our social media without feeling like it's taking over our lives, right? So, yeah, it's so exciting to have you, Lauren, and I'm very looking forward to hearing what you have to share today. So, before we jump into all the social media stuff, let me just ask you a little bit about your book. What led you to write that book, and tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Yeah, so sort of around the height of ISIS persecution of Christians, I sort of learned about that. Sort of been watching some Christian news stations, sort of was like, okay, why are people not doing anything about this? And as a writer, somebody who was interested in writing, was studying creative writing, I sort of felt like I had this idea where I wanted to tell a story from the perspective of a 14-year-old Christian Syrian girl whose family had under, undergone persecution. I'm like, well, maybe this will spread more awareness. Maybe the churches will sort of actually do something. I mean, I felt to at the time, obviously we have to help all refugees. That's not something that, we want to discriminate against, but it's kind of like, okay, we know too from the Bible, the church is supposed to look out for the church. We're supposed to be taking care of our brothers and sisters. And it seemed like for some reason, these people were being ignored. So it was really frustrating. And I sort of had that idea. And it sort of gotten, you know, started and then put aside when I went to school for communications, and sort of got further developed later down the road when I had some more time during lockdowns, and sort of changed unexpectedly, but in a good way.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So, tell us a bit about your journey writing that book. What was the enjoyable aspects, and what were the things that were maybe a little bit harder?
Yeah, I really enjoyed, the writing process, and letting the story transform. At the time when I first started writing, obviously, I didn't feel like I had that much time, and my habits were consistent, so that was a bit of a struggle. But I think overall, the main struggle was, sometimes working with the editor can be challenging, especially as a first time author. And then going into, the publishing side of things is can be very challenging for me. Trying to figure out some things on my own because was self-published in terms of formatting. Like I could only get so far, and I was having struggles, so I ended up outsourcing that. Like just learning that the formatting isn't my thing. I've sort of as an introvert, I have a marketing communications background, trying to market myself, getting out of my comfort zones in a lot of areas, has been sometimes a struggle, and just knowing that, there's people who want to read my book out there, and God has them lined up for me, and that, I need to get out there and not worrying about if things are perfect, or you know, just finding two sometimes ways around your comfort objections and finding comfortable environments and ways to get out there and letting them work with you.
Absolutely. So much in what you just said, so much, because yeah, I think that writing and publishing journey, I mean, there's the writing part that's challenging. And I know for myself, speaking for myself, I experienced so much work that God was doing in me whilst I was writing that book, that I felt like that I was writing that book almost for me to process through some stuff that I was going through.
Yeah,
But
definitely. I
also,
can relate to that.
yeah, and then also, like, working from the reality that what you are doing is significant because God has called you to write that book. And He usually has the reader in mind. You know, He knows who that message is for, who that story is for. I mean, our stories are so powerful, whether we're writing fiction or we're writing nonfiction. Story is an incredible tool to unlock something, some truths in somebody's heart that really needs to hear that story. And living from that conviction and that knowledge that you're not just writing a book, you're answering a call, you're actually doing this because God is calling you to do that. um, you know, that gives that gives it that added weight of responsibility sometimes to carry that message, to be faithful with it, and to steward that message well. So we're talking today specifically about stewarding our story and using social media um, to market our stories and get those stories out there. What has your journey been like with social media? And I love that you have a marketing background, so you must know what you're doing when it comes to social media. What's been your experience before we go into your advice? What's been your experience with your book?
Yeah, I would say, for me, like I said, it's been a struggle to be in terms of getting out there and talking about my book. Sometimes you feel like, especially after that initial launch, you're like, so, as a new author, it doesn't always go the way you think your plans, even if you had realistic expectations. You weren't like, I'm going to sell 15 million books or whatever. Of course, none of us go into thinking that, I don't think. But you're like, okay, maybe I'll sell 10 or 20 initially kind of thing if you're being realistic. And that was sort of where my head was. Did it work out that way? Not exactly. But, it was too realizing, okay, I thought I had to have all these platforms because, of course, you think you have to be on all the platforms, and there weren't quite as many then as there are now. And I think coming from a faith background and somebody who wants to speak truth and love, I sort of realized, there might be some censorship issues at some point. So I'm like, maybe I have to have these alternative platforms just in case.
Yeah,
And I think maybe, not worrying about that. And I sort of realized after two, you can still have other accounts for backup, which you don't have to be on them all the time. That's more of something if you need it. And that's also why, we do stuff like email lists, and, you know, have a website so people can find you just
yeah,
in case, you may not mean to say something, you may still be trying to be within, the boundaries, but sometimes people just don't like that and not having, I mean, try not to bring your anxieties into your initial marketing too, because I think we're so concerned about saying the wrong thing or being the wrong thing, and then we hold back and we're not saying what God needs us to say on
yeah,
marketing. I mean, that's definitely something I've been learning and, letting God remind me too that, there are people who want to hear about my book. I may have to sound like a broken record sometimes and talk about it a lot more, but there are people who haven't read it yet who want to hear about it. I have, friends and family who have read it who enjoyed it. People in my writing group who read it enjoyed it, and they will want to share. So if I share about my book, it gives them an opportunity to share that post. So just remembering every time you share, even if you think I'm just sharing with these people who've already heard about it so many times, it gives you them an opportunity to share it with somebody else more easily.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so encouraging. And I love what you mentioned about stepping outside of your comfort zone, because I think for so many people, social media is not their comfort zone. I remember the first time I went live on Facebook. I think my heart, it felt like my heart was beating in my throat. I was so nervous. My hands were sweating. Um, it was very scary, but sometimes we just have to take that first step, get over that initial fear. And the more we do it, the less afraid we become. Well, that's been my experience. I won't say I'm 100% in my comfort zone being on social media, but I also know I have come a long way. And sometimes you've just got to do it afraid. And the more you do it, the less afraid you become. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Lauren. That's really good. So what would you say are the essential things for people to know if they want to be consistent with their social media?
Yeah, I would say, especially if, one of the things, obviously, it's very similar to when we're trying to create writing habits. I mean, you have to create a time and a plan of when you're going to write and how long you're going to be doing. And I mean, of course, what you're writing. So social media is very much the same thing. I would say, one mistake, like, as I mentioned, that I made, even though I knew sort of not to make that is, thinking you have to have all these platforms, especially when you're first starting out. Ideally, I say, start with one you're comfortable with, that your target audience is on and is active on, and just, build from there. Also, don't feel like you have to show up every day, all day. That's not what consistency is. It's showing up on a regular basis. So pick, create a plan, pick, the days you want to show up. Maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. For me, when I first started doing my business maple cross marketing, I was also having some other health stuff going on, and I was already on social media 2 days a week for my writing. So I just picked one day that I could show up because that was sort of what I felt I could handle at the time. So working with what you can handle at the time and building that, making sure it's sustainable. Obviously, as writers, we're all very busy people too. Most of us, writing is not our only thing we're doing. You have a day job, you have a business, you have family, you have kids, you have other responsibilities. So just trying to pick something that works for you. Another thing I recommend is writing posts ahead of time and set some time aside to do that. Same thing with any graphics you need to create. And even if you only do it a week ahead of time, you'll save yourself the stress of trying to come up with something on the day of a blank screen. I know the blank screen is something we all sort of deal with as authors already.
Yeah.
So let's not put ourselves into, more of a pressure cooker with the blank screen of social media, right? And just, to scheduling if you can. If you have an author business account, whether, Facebook, Instagram, any platform, and you have the ability to schedule that ahead of time, great. If not, if you're posting to your personal page, just a reminder on your phone, your digital calendar. But I would also say, give yourself grace. I mean, God gives us grace. It's there for a reason. Your posts don't have to be perfect. It's something you can always tweak and reshare at a later date. That's one of the great things with some of these big platforms like Facebook with the algorithms and the way the feed works. People aren't going to see it all the time. They may not remember seeing it. So you can use that to your advantage, and it's also a great way to deal with overwhelm and sharing old things. And if you miss a day or longer, just pick up where you left off and keep going because it can build. It takes time to build habits. Life happens, and the one thing I'll say about scheduling to your personal page, because I, just had to get over this myself. If it doesn't happen the exact same time every day, don't worry about it. Just put it up there. At least you're getting it up there. It's not as big a deal as we make things out to be sometimes, and just, understanding the plan might change. What works for you in one season isn't going to work in another, and that's okay. And that's something I've sort of had to deal with myself in my marketing and in life. And I think we also have to deal with, we have this perfect idea, this perfect plan, this perfect schedule. Everything's going to go off without a hitch sometimes. At least I know I do. Um, Life doesn't work that way. God doesn't work that way. And, just trusting that He's going to help you get into a plan and a schedule that works for you. And if it's not 100% perfect at the beginning or even during, it's okay. Because, you know, just having that plan is a start, and you can build
Yeah.
and just trusting Him.
Yeah. Such good advice in there. There's so much in there. And I love what you say about planning and scheduling ahead of time. I have seen this, people know in this group already. I'm constantly going on, just get into scheduling your content, because it takes such a weight off your shoulders that in the moment I've got to think about what to come up with next. And then taking the content that you have already published and turning that into either a different graphic, or you can turn it into a reel, you can repurpose it in so many different ways. So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. I love that. I love that so much. That resonates with me. And I've seen firsthand the difference it makes when you just take that time to kind of think ahead, whether it's a week or a month, as you said, like just think ahead, get your posts out, schedule, and then you can just relax. And what I love most about it is then I can engage with the people who are engaging on my page. I can actually pay attention to that rather than think, okay, I've got to post today. I can, I have to come up with the goods. So that's really helpful. And what I love most about what you share is that it doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to get it all right all of the time. We don't have to be present all of the time. But just take that first step, get out there, share your story, share your message, do it afraid, and you will become less afraid as you do it. And God has grace. He has grace for us in that process. I've needed to experience that grace a lot of the time in this author journey. And I also love what you said about that seasons change and plans change and our social media changes. Yeah, oh my goodness, there's a lot in there. I think I need to go back, make some notes and write these things down because they are super helpful. Okay, so can I just throw in a question about algorithms? We hear so much about algorithms. Is there a secret way to kind of crack in? Because I think a lot of us kind of think this algorithm thing is this mystical thing, right? It's like, if I get my post out at the right time and just the right way, then I'm going to be able to get seen by more people. What do you say about algorithms?
Yeah, like I would say, obviously, there's recommendations. For example, if you use Meta Business Suite, they'll tell you, oh, this is a good time on this when your people are on. That is, can be helpful, especially if you're pre-scheduling, then, great. But, one of the things is obviously showing up on a regular basis gets people to see your posts, makes them, because the algorithm knows when you're showing up. So, being predictable obviously is a big help in that. And I think sometimes too, just not worrying about what the algorithm is doing, because I know that can be a point of stress. Sometimes has been for me. I'm just like, oh, it's not showing my stuff to anybody. But it's like, sometimes too, like on social media, there's so many people who will see your stuff and they'll come back to it later. Like, people lurk more online. And I think that's, something that's becoming more normalized.
Yeah.
So just, showing up consistently, just you can check those times if you're scheduling stuff ahead of time. but it can be very helpful if you want to show up when your people are showing up. But understanding too, like obviously their times are going to change too. So sometimes maybe just showing up when feels right to you or in that general window. Because I've got sometimes I'm looking at my stuff and it's showing people are showing up at 6 p.m. on a Sunday on my stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be on social media at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Like, I'll
Yeah.
gladly come back and, answer any comments or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes we still have to do what works for us.
Yeah. I suppose in a way you can create your own rhythm.
Yeah, and a little bit, and like with that consistency, right? We
Yeah.
show up and
Yeah.
not worry about it, and then it sort of feeds the algorithm and it sort of figures out, hey, this is when they're showing up.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your business, Maple Cross Marketing. How did you start that, and what do you do?
Yeah, so after sort of a journey of getting laid off due to restructuring in 2021 and sort of trying to find something else and it wasn't happening, and I sort of had, an idea someday, I will start doing content marketing and communications stuff for other people. So when I have a family of my own, I can be at home with my kids and doing that. And so being creative and helping people and doing, the things that I love. And it was just sort of a nudge. Okay, maybe it's time to start this now. So I help people with their online presence, social media marketing, web content management behind that stuff. I do have stuff where I will do all done for you. I'm have a beta offer right now where I sort of help people create a plan and coach. And I also do stuff like, if you need a consult, you want some templates just for your graphics so you don't have to outsource all the time.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I have, very on the one hand, I have very, set out things, and then I also have the opportunity to do very custom things. Obviously, everything is still customized to a degree. But
Awesome. So if people want to connect with you or they want to get your book, how do they connect and how do they buy your book?
so if you're looking for my book or to connect with me, you can go to my website, which is www.ladara.ca. I sort of write under a pen name because I started when I was in communications, and it's sort of interesting enough, a bit of a family tradition. I have my grandmother's third cousin was V.S. Pritchett. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, I'll just, and I really, have a bit of a thing for some of C.S. Lewis's theological writings. So I started writing under a pen name too at the time just to keep it separate. There's not really as much of a need for that anymore, but that's what I did. The book itself, obviously, you can find the various links for that. But if you wanted a paperback black copy, the only place I have that right now is
Right.
Amazon. It's also available on Amazon digitally and some of the bigger forms like Kobo or iBooks. You can get it digitally. I'm currently not available on Google. I just haven't explored getting it
Right.
in terms of yeah. Well, I guess I also should say I'm on Instagram and Facebook more for my other platforms. So that's at LA Dare Author for both of those.
Okay.
And for my business, you can connect with me through Instagram and Facebook, both Maple Cross Marketing or just Lauren, Lauren, at maplecrossmarketing.ca if you want to send me an email. I sort of have a Canva website right now, so I haven't done the domain over at some point and wanting to get something a little more steady, but when we just start out, we need to start simple. So something I'm following in my business too.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren, for sharing with us today, sharing your wisdom and your experience with social media marketing. Yeah, if you had to leave us with one thought, what would that be?
Yeah, I guess just keep things simple. ask God for help and trust that keeping things simple and doing as he suggests is going to get you where you need to be in terms of consistency. Because I know I'm a creative, but I also am a planner, and it feels like when I look back at everything, even my whole life, I'm just like, my plans have never quite turned out. And, he has better plans for us. So he can definitely help us in planning our
Absolutely.
social media.
Yes, absolutely. And he loves to. He loves to help us with everything, every little detail. Awesome.
Definitely.
Thank you, Lauren, so much for your time and for being with us today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon in the group. Bye.